Train and Drive By, BBC Radio Stoke, Hanksy's house tonight. Oh dear. The doorbell sounds like it's had a few, doesn't it, really? Actually, did you know that it's the last day of English Wine Week?
A glass of wine, that's all it is.
So just in the nick of time then, let's learn a bit about it with a man who is relatively new to learning a bit about it himself. Peter Barker Morgan is from Hooze Hollow Farm in Alsager and joins me on the show. Hello, Peter.
Good evening.
Good evening. Peter, is it a coincidence that Hooze rhymes with booze?
It is, but it's a rather good one, isn't it?
I quite like that, yeah. It's just a happy accident, isn't it?
It
is. So buying some vines and growing your own vineyard then with a plan to be producing English sparkling wine, why did you become interested? I mean, it's a silly question really, isn't it? That's an ace job. What a great thing to do. Why were you interested in doing it?
Well, a number of reasons really. I've perhaps most of all, I do like wine. I enjoy it. I make my own cider as a hobby. We're also looking to plant cider orchards to produce sort of cider on the same sort of scale. And a few years ago, one of our tenants passed away, and the land that he rented off us, the good land, was sectioned off and it was leased out to some of our tenant farmers who make use of it, growing sort of conventional crops. And this left several acres of sort of very narrow, well-drained, sandy fields, all conveniently pointing in a sort of southwesterly direction. So after not sort of taking the hint which had been given to me, I put horses on for a while, and still scratching my head as what I could really do with them. It suddenly dawned that it was the perfect thing to plant a vineyard on.
It absolutely sounds like it as well. Have you enjoyed learning about it so far, all the processes involved?
Absolutely. It's fascinating and absolutely infuriating in equal measure. It's really, really interesting. And then at other times you're sort of there pulling your hair out, sort of trying to figure out what goes on. And the entire process is so sort of slow and glacial that you do something and then you have sort of potentially months to sort of worry about it. If it's turned out well or not.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? When you're producing wine, you have to wait for several years before you can actually sample it. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, and you've got to wait for I think about 4 years after planting your vine before you can sort of grow anything on it to actually make wine. So we're quite far off from that stage yet, but loads of time to worry about how everything can go disastrously wrong, but touch wood, nothing has yet.
I guess you'll just have a lot of wine on your hands if it does go wrong. Maybe that's the solution.
Yes, well, I will drink more or less anything. So if it is terrible wine, it will do for me.
Has the pandemic had an effect on this actually? Because it must have thrown up some challenges along the way over the last 15 months.
It hasn't. Only in one very, very narrow, very narrow sort of respect. In that one of the growers who we were ultimately buying some vines off in France managed to catch COVID, which then had a sort of knock-on effect with things arriving. But apart from that very, very narrow sense, well, no, we've sort of just got on with it, really.
That's good to hear, isn't it? I guess what the differences are for me, because it's quite rare, isn't it, for us to talk about English sparkling wine. Loads of us, when we go out and we say a glass of fizz, we mean Prosecco, we mean Cava, we mean champagne. What's the good thing about English sparkling wine?
Well, so, I mean, it's strangely enough, it's not really a good thing, and that is climate change. So recently, in the past few decades, the climate has changed enough to make it viable to grow decent wine over here. And that's where sort of sparkling wine comes into it, because for sparkling wine, you don't need grapes that are quite so ripe. You don't need to develop, them to develop quite so much sugar. So over here we are slightly colder climates than, most of the places that grow grapes. But now we've sort of nevertheless warmed up enough to grow grapes to sufficient sort of ripeness for sort of good quality sparkling wines. And it's sort of backed up by the fact that a number of sort of big French champagne houses are buying up sort of slices of England significantly further down south than Cheshire, but nevertheless, they're buying up English vineyards.
Now, the weather's getting a bit warmer, isn't it, Peter? Thankfully, even though the sun hasn't particularly been in the sky much today, when it does get warmer, what do you think is a great recommendation for us in terms of wine?
I'm going to have to say English sparkling wine. But I don't know really. There are so many, so many fantastic vineyards. But yeah, I mean, English sparkling wine. It's quality wise, it's available very, very reasonably. And compares pretty well to sort of everything else at its, at its sort of level. It's excellent.
And of course, the good thing about that as well, if it's white wine, it will be chilled, won't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Or pink champagne, just as good. Or pink English sparkling wine.
Did you do anything to mark the fact that it was English Wine Week?
I didn't, and I'll be perfectly honest, in that I didn't know it was until you told me about it, which makes me feel rather guilty and sort of slightly inept. But no, it's. I've been drinking wine, which I suppose is as good a thing to do as any. And I spent the day in the vineyard, sort of fighting with bits of metal poles to make trellising and things. But no, other than that, I haven't really done anything to celebrate it, I'm afraid.
Just a normal day in the office, as they would say. So English Wine Week between the 19th and the 27th of June. You've got a few hours left to celebrate that. Then you can you can make the most of that, can't you, Peter?
I can. Yeah, it's amazing how much you can drink in just a few hours.
Oh no. Please drink responsibly. But Peter, I love the sound of what you're doing. It sounds like you're really enthusiastic about it as well, which is great to hear. And because we have to be patient to get all the fruits of your labour, so to speak, we'll be patient, we'll wait for it.
Good, I'm glad to hear.
Well, look forward to being able to get you back in the studio at some point as well. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Lovely to get you on the show tonight, Peter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Take care. Oh, that's Peter there, Peter Barker Morgan. He's from Hooze Hollow Farm over in Alsager. Imagine that, getting to the point where you think, well, I need a little bit of a new project. I know, why don't I get into vineyards? Have you done that?